There is a road in Russia that has no name. It cuts through forests so deep that sunlight forgets to visit. It crosses rivers that freeze so hard you can drive a tank across them. It climbs mountains that have watched empires rise and fall. And somewhere along that road, in a blizzard, in the middle of the night, with the temperature at -.
To understand the greatest Russian car ever made, you must first understand Russia itself. Not the Russia of glossy travel magazines, or ballet theaters, or fairy tale onion domes painted gold. No, the real Russia. The Russia of endless steppes, of winters so brutal they broke Napoleon's finest armies, of a people who have survived more catastrophe, more war, more heartbreak than almost any civilization in human history. These are a people who learned, long ago, that survival is not just a skill, it is an art. And that art, that soul, would eventually pour itself into 4 wheels and an engine. The year is 1945. The Second World War has just ended. The Soviet Union has lost 27 million people. 27 million. That number is almost impossible to hold in the human mind. It is grief beyond measure. It is destruction beyond comprehension. But from the ashes of that destruction, the Soviet people did what they always do. They built. The story begins not with glamour, but with necessity.
And then came LADA. Oh, that name. Say it in Russia today, and you will get 1,000 different reactions. A grandmother will smile, her eyes going soft with memory. A young man will laugh and roll his eyes. A mechanic will nod, slow and serious, with the respect you give to something that has earned it. LADA. Simple. 4 letters. And behind them, an entire universe. The Volzhsky automobile plant, VAZ, was built in the late 1960s in the city of Togyati on the banks of the Volga River. The Soviets partnered with the Italian manufacturer Fiat, yes, Fiat, to produce a car for the people. Not for generals, not for party officials, for the people. The base design was the Fiat 124, but what the Soviets did to that Italian blueprint is one of the great engineering stories of the 20th century. They didn't just copy it, they transformed it, reinforced the suspension for roads that could shatter ordinary cars, increased the ground clearance for roads that barely deserved the name, strengthened the engine for temperatures that could freeze metal solid, changed over 800 components to make this Italian car survive in a place that would have destroyed the original. What emerged was something entirely new, something entirely...
But love alone does not make a great car. Results do. And the Kopeyka, the entire LADA family that descended from it, delivered results that no one outside the Soviet Union fully appreciated. Because in the West, behind the Iron Curtain, LADA had a reputation. Not always a kind one. They were called simple, cheap, unsophisticated. The people who said those things had never driven one through a Siberian winter. While sophisticated Western cars with their complex fuel injection systems and delicate electronics were refusing to start in -30-degree temperatures, the LADA, with its simple, robust, almost brutally uncomplicated engineering, just started. Every single time. The engine was over-engineered by Western standards. Everything had tolerances built for abuse, not refinement. The suspension could handle roads that had no right to be called roads at all. The heating system was ferocious, because in Russia, heating is not a luxury, it is survival. Soviet engineers understood something that took Western manufacturers decades to learn, that the best technology is not always the most complex. Sometimes the best technology is the kind that works when everything else has failed. The LADA was not a sophisticated car, it was a reliable one. And in Russia, on Russian roads, in Russian weather, in a country where the nearest mechanic might be 500 kilometers away, reliability was worth more than all the sophistication in the world. And then, LADA decided to go racing. In the 1970s and 80s, Soviet LADA cars began appearing in international rally competitions, and the world, which had been chuckling at the idea of a Soviet economy car competing on the world stage, stopped laughing. LADA drivers, in their modified VAZ machines, were competitive, genuinely, embarrassingly, thrillingly competitive. On loose gravel, on ice, on the kinds of surfaces that separate real cars from pretenders.
To understand what made the Niva revolutionary, you need to understand what existed before it. In 1977, if you wanted a capable off-road vehicle, your options were essentially military trucks adapted for civilian use, body-on-frame monsters that were mechanically reliable but rode like tractors and handled like boats. The Land Rover Defender, the Jeep CJ. They were capable, they were honest, and they were utterly, miserably uncomfortable on a normal road. The idea that you could have genuine 4x4 capability, serious mud and mountain go-anywhere capability, in a car that also had a coil spring suspension, was genuinely comfortable, and could cruise happily at highway speeds, that idea in 1977 was almost laughable. The Niva made everyone stop laughing. Permanent four-wheel drive, a locking center differential, a low-range gearbox, coil springs on all four corners, not leaf springs, not solid axles, giving it a ride quality that shocked everyone who drove it. The Niva was the world's first modern compact SUV, the blueprint that every Land Rover Discovery, every Toyota RAV4, every Subaru Outback that came after it owes a quiet debt to. The Soviet engineers in Togliatti looked at the automotive world, saw a gap that no one else had noticed, and filled it with a car so ahead of its time that the rest of the industry spent decades catching up. Let that sink in. The world's first modern SUV, born in Soviet Russia in 1977. But revolutionary engineering means nothing without proof, and the Niva provided proof in ways that no one could question. The Niva has been driven to the North Pole, the actual North Pole. A team of Soviet, later Russian adventurers drove a modified Niva across Arctic ice to the top of the world, a feat that had defeated everything else they tried. The Niva has climbed the highest peaks in the Caucasus Mountains. It has forded rivers in Central Asia that swallowed other vehicles whole. It has crossed the Sahara Desert. It has navigated the jungles of Central Africa. It has conquered the Dakar Rally, that legendary, brutal race across desert and mountain that destroys lesser vehicles like paper. Farmers in Russia use them. Farmers in Africa use them. Shepherds in the mountains of Kyrgyzstan use them. Scientists in Antarctica use them. Forest rangers in Canada use them. French hunters buy them because nothing handles French forest terrain the way a Niva does. France, one of the most automotive sophisticated nations on Earth, and for years France was one of the biggest export markets for the LADA Niva. French people chose this Soviet car over everything else available to them because they recognized something real in it, something honest, something that no amount of marketing budget or luxury trim could fake. It worked. Purely, simply, magnificently, it worked. For the Russian automotive industry, this moment is like the ground disappearing beneath your feet. Overnight, the protected market that had kept The 2000s. Russia changes. Wealth flows back into the country. Confidence returns. And with it, slowly, painfully, but unmistakably, the will to build something great again. Avtovaz, on the edge of collapse for a decade, found partners. First from General Motors, then decisively from the Renault-Nissan-Mitsubishi alliance. The French and Japanese brought new technology, new quality standards, new manufacturing processes. But here is the remarkable thing. What they found in Togliatti, beneath the layers of post-Soviet dysfunction, beneath the outdated equipment and the difficult working conditions, was a core of engineers and workers who still cared, who still remembered what it meant to build something with pride. That core was not discarded. It was strengthened. Combined with new knowledge flowing from Paris and Tokyo, it became the seed of something genuinely new. The Niva had never stopped, but in the 21st century, it got new life. The renamed LADA 4x4, the Niva, essentially, with modern updates, continued to prove its fundamental concept was timeless. Continuously updated with fuel injection, improved safety systems, better comfort, it remained at its core the same brilliant off-road machine that Prusiak's team had created in 1977. But Avtovaz was not content to live only on the past. The new LADA Niva Travel, sleeker, more modern, more powerful, arrived to show that the philosophy that had created the original could be applied to a thoroughly contemporary vehicle. And then came the LADA Vesta. The Vesta was Russia's statement to the world, a genuinely modern car, properly engineered, properly built, with quality that could stand comparison to European competitors. When international automotive journalists drove it for the first time, many of them arrived expecting to be polite and left genuinely impressed. Not because it was perfect, but because it was real, because it showed that Russian engineering had not lost its fundamental seriousness, its fundamental commitment to making something that worked. There is a moment in the life of every great car nation where the cars stop being just machines and become something else. Symbols, characters in the national story, vessels for memory and emotion. Russia reached that moment long ago. The man who taught his son to drive in a LADA Kopeyka on a dusty road in the 1970s. The grandmother who kept the keys to her Niva hanging by the door for 30 years, unable to sell it because her late husband had loved it so. The young engineer in Togliatti who works 14-hour days, not for the money.
There is a doctor in a remote village in Yakutia, one of the coldest inhabited places on Earth, who has driven a LADA Niva to reach patients for the last 22 years, in temperatures that dropped to -60, on roads that existed only as vague suggestions in the landscape. She has never been stranded, never failed to reach someone who needed her. There are farmers in the mountains of Georgia, not the American Georgia, the Caucasian one, who could not work their land without the Niva. The terrain is impossible for anything else. The Niva makes it possible. There are scientists at Antarctic research stations who chose the Niva over specialized polar vehicles because in the most extreme environment on the planet, they trusted it more. These are not marketing stories. These are true stories. Stories of a machine that has genuinely, measurably changed lives, saved lives, made lives possible that could not have existed otherwise. Can you say that about a luxury car? Can you say it about a sports car? Can you say it about any car that prioritizes style over substance, image over ability, the showroom over the road? No, you cannot. But you can say it about the Niva. And there is a bigger truth here, beyond the Niva itself. Russian automotive engineering, dismissed, underestimated, laughed at for decades, gave the world something priceless. It gave the world proof that great engineering does not require unlimited budgets. It does not require the most advanced technology or the most sophisticated manufacturing. It requires something simpler and rarer. It requires the courage to solve the